All right, so right out the gates, we have a pretty confident offer. We have some aggression at the highs of this profile, and then a flush further below 74s. Some range extension happening into the lows now, and we'll see how this develops further. Continuing on this morning through the sell-off, we see a bit of a bid player coming in here along the 4170 71 handle. I mentioned with NQ trading above 302, I think and consider that a plus for bulls. This area is where I would be looking to initiate my first long, and I would have a tight stop of about negative 2 points here, just a few ticks under a new low. With this action forming, this is fast forwarded a bit, but seeing more and more absorption, and this blip actually does not stop me out. I decide to lean into it, so to say, another line of longs. So I have two lines of longs here, one at 70 hard and 70.75. My stop would be 68 and a quarter. It was at about this time at which NQ started trading below its 304 pivot that I mentioned. And upon further inspection, after looking at the flows in the first 5 minutes, I identified that I wanted to play around this 4173 local resistance. If I were to pick a price, that's where I think a seller would reoffer from. And with NQ trading now lower and under its pivot, I have to respect my stops and I'll be stopped out. It's literally one more tick from here. So this ends up stopping me out. Pretty much my open idea was wrong, and I was able to keep my risk pretty tight, risking just above 2 points on this idea with another line of ads. Um, Not much to say now until about here. And it was about at this point in which I actually wanted to stay with the sellers. I was like, okay, I tried the long idea, it didn't work out, was never able to trade above the local resistance I made. And so now I'm starting to really like the idea of joining sellers, and I'm slowly watching price, carefully watching price rather, and I'm looking for an entry. And it's where we get to this point in the replay where I fell short and I wanted to place a stop above the local R that I identified earlier. So you'll start to see me typing, and in real time, I mentioned that I actually see sellers willing to stay aggressive, especially after the flush. They were able to prevent prices from even retesting the area that I'd like to get. And so I filled shorts and I'm looking for this offer to extend the lows. Just mentioning that again, my stops are above the local R that I found earlier. So right about here, we start to see some activity into the lows. And despite my initial earlier long bias, I find myself now short and also welcoming some ads into the lows. So I mentioned that I'm siding with the seller here. I actually like the absorption that I'm seeing into previous, like earlier in the session lows. Some absorption coming in from sellers actively into the lows. And overall, I'm looking to um, lean into this further. I now have a position at 69 and 70, same stops at 64, 74, sorry. Basically, just this activity that I'm seeing is confirming what I want to see when joining a potential trend. And based on this, I think we're going to just go ahead and step into the next sequence of this. So fast forward ending and making some notes mentioning that um, the bid tape is actually pretty active against my entry, my initial entry. I'm basically questioning, because they're aggressive, because they're appearing, I'm seeing these bid tapes blip up. Basically, I'm asking myself, are they able to extend the range? Are they able to stop me out? This whole event happening is in itself a clue. Basically, anything below 74s, I'm confident with my ads, and I'm just waiting at this point. Okay, so I've actually paused the video here, paused the replay, and I got a few things I got to unpack. So at this point in the session, um, we tried long, that didn't work out, we got stopped out. We flipped short, found an entry, and we found a spot to add. And now our decision's been made, our bets have been staked, our risk is defined, and we're kind of just waiting to see what happens next. So at this point in the day, it seems like the offer is able to hold price down, and sellers now have a turn to attempts to extend this beyond the lows. I also mentioned that the auction's getting tight, and I would deem this a valid auction. Now, a lot of people wonder what I deem a valid auction, and basically that just simply means that when this range breaks, you want to trade with that direction. A valid auction basically, or auction market theory basically says that prices will trade until it doesn't. So we're basically establishing who's in control within this range of, say, low of the day 66 to my current soft R at 74. So right now it's 66 versus 74. And given the way that this range is traded, I'm going to stake larger bets that a break of this range will have continuation. And so whoever was trying to buy this dip is now getting stopped out and I'm flushing it further, and vice versa. If it were sellers to lose, price would go up, and I'd expect there to be some sort of squeeze above 74. So, with all of this being said, I mentioned that the auction's getting tight, and basically, if we start trading new lows of days, I think it's going to continue. So I'm probably going to just basically let this run from here. Um, at this point in the session, I was looking for a break of this auction that I deemed valid, and I wanted to add into this position, expecting continuation, and I would do so via sell stop execution orders at 41.66. I wanted to, in terms of management, I wanted to double my position. So if I had two lots, two R, it could be whatever iterative of 2R. I wanted to double my position into the sell stop ads. So in this case, I had 2R. I now have 4R, and I'm looking to maintain my stop at 73.5 to 74s. So we're trying to punch into the lows, and I believe I'm about to just mention that. I mean, I see it here in the replay that it's getting thick. So when a position is getting thick, it just means that there's still a participant, kind of like still holding it up. Now we don't know why. We don't know if it's a seller loading up more. We don't know if it's a buyer absorption, but we just know that there's activity present, and that's important. So with this thickness into the lows, I'm getting a little wary of a bounce. And now at this point in your trade, you have your plan, you have your entry, you have your execution. Now, just taking in the new market generated information, I wanted to make sure that my plan still aligns. So at this point, I have ads at the top of the profile. I have ads into the absolute bottom of the profile. And I'm basically looking for my original stop outs to like really be the key, but I may still take a loss, say, if we were to trade above my initial entry. These little nuances when I'm adding into an idea need to be listed. And so I start to prepare myself of like where I think I'm wrong. I should be starting to formulate this part two of the ideas soon. There we go. And so I start to draw out this range, and I'm really focused on this. Basically, committed to my position. I'm pretty happy shorting anything below this box. I don't care if I add before price returns, like i.e. if I were to add in now, um, or if I were to wait to see if price retrades into it. That just kind of comes down to the discretion of the trader. Either way, I'm quite confident as I'm writing in real time in any offer with price below this box. So um, I have the ability in hindsight to know that we're gonna do a quick blip lower and then vicious trade back up into the box, and that would have been the absolute perfect spot to re-add, which is what I end up executing. So under these lows, we're still seeing sellers pile into the lows, so it's just more and more a little too heavy for like on the flip side. I think I deem that this is a little too heavy for a reversal to spawn out of here, um, barring the reaction from buyers that we'll get. But nonetheless, I'm going to focus on the sell side point of view, and here we're just seeing still interest into the lows, new prints, new prints, new prints. Like the activity is good. The fact you're seeing volume down, trading down into here is just aligning with the idea that um, sellers find it fair at these prices. So they're going to keep piling in. And if the bid slips, that's when you start to see the unwind of all these short term early dip buyers. So here you start to see like sellers losing a little bit of ground, right? The bid's coming in, pop, pop, pop. This new quarter turn pulls up, taps the rectangle. It's faster tape now, as that I'm mentioning. So like we're just seeing the two-way participation happening in real time. It was expected with the thickness into the lows. Now I'm not going to say that I'm Jesus and I know that the market's going to turn down from here, but I am in fact going to um, lean further into this position. So 1R at the tops, I had 2R adds into the lows, so now 4R. And in this idea, I look to add another 2R. So now we have a total of like six, whatever your risk is, six of them based up against this trade idea, shorting against 74. So here is when I got my ads filled, right there. Mentioned that if based on your risk tolerance, you can have a shorter stop, a tighter stop on these super aggressive ads. Maybe they're just above swing high, maybe they're above just the box, or maybe they're above 74. Wherever your risk manages, that's where you would take your stop. So now here I am listing out my position. I have one at 70, one at 68, two at 66, and two at 68. That isn't position size. That is simply what my 1R is. So now we're getting a good reoffer from the expected area that we wanted to contest over. And at this point, I'm just looking to peel off some. As I've mentioned in the past, that we don't know, every time we make a new extreme, we don't know what's going to happen next. And the reaction that tape has is really what overall determines how greedy I get with my position. And so here we have the extension that I was looking for, breaking beyond the lows. And when I start to see a buyer showing up, that's when I start to think about trimming. I believe I did not trim within whatever the current profile is. I was looking for another blip lower. Yeah, trim into new lows. The most aggressive, the most exposed part of my position. So I have the 66s, sell stop execution that I had. And I'm looking to just take this first layer off first, quoting where I would take that layer off. I believe it's for a gain of 5 points. So we're definitely seeing the two-way trade here. One can contest or argue that maybe you want to take the trim, uh, you know, above the low of the days, but just based on my experience and the activity that I saw nothing but lower, and it's not a point for me to quote unquote wussy out. I'm looking for extension. I found the pivot. Well, I mean, first of all, I actually went long, found a reversal spot, found a point in which I wanted to stay true for pivot, and now this is the mental game that I often stress about, in which it kind of comes down to how well you can manage your like how well you can fight your own mental. People's emotions change when they're in drawdown. People's emotions change when they see the profits roll in. Here you're starting to consider your plan. Guessing seeing this replay again, it's actually pretty bearish to me that we have this kind of current ledge. We have a little ledge, for the first 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes or so. Basically a poor low, right? We spike higher, that gets immediately reoffered, and now we're doing all this volume into the lows. The fact that buyers can't push us up despite being behind the buyer. Now we start to see a pop lower. Next extension. It's easy to see in replay, but I'm glad I identified this in real time. Could have probably looked to hold um, longer, but I was doing this live. I was streaming this, and the fact that you got to do this in front of others, it gets even that plays into your emotions. So, first things first, right about now, should be fire off. Should fire off like one more blip. I get my first layer off that was more aggressive. The sell stop execution's off. Nailed it there. Now I'm looking for the continuation, and we're seeing sellers further execute lower and lower and lower. Seeing these red prints, it's a good sign of market offers hitting into the bid, into the lows. Therefore, it's just an aggressive order. We're continue to seeing flows being trampled. And basically, I'm listing off my next plan. Got the first layer off at +5. Next, just +10. Nice even numbers. Seems I'm fast forwarding this bit of the replay. And here. Great. So, replay no longer fast forwarding. Here is my +10 point trim. You know, Nothing else more to say. I was looking for this extension. We're getting it. Kind of just managing my position, making sure I'm taking profits where needed, and um, holding runners for an expected move lower based on how aggressive we want to kind of continue. Um, Mentioned that I have 2R at 68 and 1R at 70. Now trading 56s, I have stops. I have the same stops remaining above the swing highs where the local R was. And kind of just going to be taking trims from here. So yeah, as I mentioned, not much more to say beyond that. I have 2R remaining, so a third of my position from 41.68. We are now trading 20 points lower. I actually end up fast forwarding and cutting the rest of the clips, where I will be then 30 points lower and taking my third of the position off plus 30. And that's a wrap.